What's that on your face? Oh, baby, you have a bit of hair on your face. You have such a hairy face. You do. You have such a hairy face. You good face, though. Yes, it is. It's a good face. Oh, it's gone there again. What is that thing blocking your eye? Oh, baby. Might be time for a trim. God. Where is obedient? Hello, BookTube. Welcome to your Daily Penguin. This is our tour through my Penguin Classic wall there behind me. And today is a rarity. I think this may be the first time this has ever happened on the Daily Penguin, where my book today is not coming from my Penguin Classic wall because it's never had a chance to be there. I got it today. And that's astounding to me. I found a Penguin Classic that I really want, that I'd never heard of before, when I was out and about today. So I got it, and I have spent the last hour looking through it. It is incredible, and I want to share it with you. And it's this: Know the Past, Find the Future. The New York Public Library at 100. There's one of the great lions outside the Fifth Avenue, the main Beaux-Arts building of the Fifth Avenue, New York Public Library. And this book apparently came out in 2011. It was free, and it was to commemorate the centennial anniversary of the opening of that building on Fifth Avenue. I don't know how many of you have been there, but it is unending. It is just unending. You can wander around forever. I have been there. I have worked in that building many, many times over the course of many, many decades, including spending a great deal of time in the Rose Reading Room, which is just a gigantic open space where you can sit at, gorgeous wooden tables and work. But I've also wandered all over the library, every nook and cranny. And I saw this book and grabbed it right away without even knowing what it was. I thought, my first impression was that it would be a history. But it's not quite a history. It's actually something much nicer than that. It's a collection of quick pieces by writers and historians, biographers, critics, actors, library professionals. Little quick one-page or two-page pieces by such people on particular items from the New York Public Library's collection. Particular historical items. You have, for instance, Ron Chernow, the Washington biographer, holding in his hand, in protective coating, George Washington's farewell address. And a whole bunch of other things like that, running all throughout this book. Just incredible. With very quick pieces by these figures, describing not only the work or the piece of ephemera that they're holding in their hands, but also what the New York Public Library has meant to them, briefly. I love reflections like that, no matter what the library. And this library is so storied that it has sparked quite a few, more than most libraries. That's incredible. I did not know that this even existed. And it's a Penguin Classic I very much want to have. There's Ron Chernow. I was kind of surprised to find so many pictures in it. That drives up the production cost. There's Nick Laird, all of 12. That drives up the production cost, and this was free. And I also like this right here. That is inside the front cover. That is printed on it. The old library ticket with the envelope that you stuck in, and it had the stamps for when people took things out. That brings back memories, and that is now gone. That is only going to bring back memories if you are a certain age. Because libraries now check things out electronically, so they don't have papers like that inside them anymore. And slowly but surely, all the library books that had such little pockets with removable library cards in them are going to be gone. Sooner or later, they'll all be out of libraries. No one will encounter them anymore. The only problem that I had with this book was from Paul Leclerc, who in 2011 was the CEO of the New York Public Library. He retired from that position, I believe, in 2011. But he writes the introduction, and it got me hackles up. So I'll read you a bit of it. Libraries are the earliest and most enduring cultural entity. Since their origin in Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago, libraries have had only three main purposes, all revolving around collections: to acquire them, to preserve them, and to make them accessible, customarily in highly restricted ways. What sets the New York Public Library apart from all the libraries that have existed is not that it has amassed over the past 100 years, thanks to the taste and brilliance of its curators, one of the greatest collections in history. Rather, it is that the library has put this magisterial collection at the disposal of literally everyone on the planet. As opposed to all other great library collections, which are essentially closed to the public, ours is explicitly and deliberately made accessible to all. Lovely ringing prose, if only it were true. Of course, the Boston Public Library was doing exactly that 50 years before the New York Public Library was doing that, and for a good 50 years before that, before it was the actual consecrated Boston Public Library. In this, as in all things, Boston is superior to New York. Okay, just so we're clear on that. I have no idea if Paul Leclerc left his position as CEO of the New York Public Library because of the affront of that introduction. I think not. I think he was probably retired with honors and went elsewhere, but nevertheless, I can dream. But aside from that one tinny opening note, the typical tendency of New York to forget that Boston ever existed and that Boston was New York before New York was, and blaze the trail in every possible conceivable way. But aside from that, this was just wonderful. I'm gonna very much enjoy hunkering down with it and spending, dedicated time. I want to read every word of those pieces, although a lot of them will be empty boilerplate written by assistants. I still want to read it anyway. I just think this is just wonderful, and I didn't know it existed. I'm assuming that the fact that it has free stamped right on there meant that this was some sort of promotional thing for the New York Public Library, and maybe was never available in Boston. I don't know, one way or another. I'm glad to have this, very much glad to add it to that penguin wall. It supersedes the normal sequence of penguins that I had planned for today, but we'll resume that tomorrow. So that's your penguin for today. I don't know how to make it a recommend, because I don't know how available this is going to be to you to get. This is not a reprint of any older work. This is all original work. I can make it a recommend in one way, but that feels very, very melancholy. And that is to recommend that you go to the New York Public Library on Fifth Avenue and experience it for yourself. And it feels melancholy because the United States is in the grip of a gigantic pandemic. Now, New York seems to have survived its first wave intact and is doing fairly well. I don't 100% know what you can do in the New York Public Library right now. Probably you cannot do what it is designed to do, which is wander around and also sit and work at the tables in the Rose Reading Room. Probably you're not allowed to do that. And who knows if you will be allowed to do that anytime soon. I have no idea. So it's a little melancholy because I don't think you can do the full extent of what my recommendation. My recommendation would be to get to know the New York Public Library if you're anywhere near it, and to visit it and explore it on a tour if you're not, if you're just in New York City. But I don't know if that's possible, so I guess instead of a recommend, I will merely sing its praises myself. I have had many an enjoyable hour in the New York Public Library on Fifth Avenue. I have experienced it in just the ways that I think are perfect, where I work for an afternoon in the Rose Reading Room on something. I am in the city at the behest of a friend. I am going uptown to that friend's apartment. I have a place for the night. I have the Strand. I have Central Park. I have a large number of people to go and see. I have Broadway that evening. But first, in order to justify the weekend, I do a little work at the New York Public Library. I do a little work at the Rose Reading Room. And that makes it all feel better. If you can generate your 5 pages, then you are free to take the weekend off. And I have experienced this building many times that way. You come out of the library, you realize, okay, it's about time for me to meet my friend. So you come out of the library, it's pouring rain, and you just make your way into the gigantic city that doesn't know you're there. That is just the one thing I will say about New York that isn't true about Boston, is that New York is a megalopolis. A gigantic, living, breathing thing. I have always maintained that megalopolises really should be referred to with the C capitalized, because the C in city capitalized, because they aren't the same. Over a certain size, a city starts to become sentient on its own, and you can feel it. You can feel the life of the place, and it's no slight on smaller cities that is not true with them. I think it's a certain size. It's a certain kind of breathing that it does all day long. one way or another, I have felt it in gigantic megalopolises, and I don't feel it in Boston. I don't miss it in Boston. But anyway, when you feel it in New York, when you take the train or the bus into the city and you see the outlying districts are thrown off at enormous distances, dozens and dozens and dozens of miles before you ever get to the city itself. And then you see it looming up on the horizon like it's going to eat you. And it does eat lots of people. It does indeed. They're happily swallowed. And you go, and what I used to do was line up a whole bunch of things to do for a New York weekend. So it would be the opera, or it would be Broadway, back when those things were affordable. Back when you didn't have to take out a second mortgage on your home to do that. I guess it's just the mega wealthy that go to those things now. But once upon a time, it was everybody. And you could run into book editors, book publicists, struggling mid-list authors. Excuse me. You could run into all of those people in the audiences of the Met. But it would be that. It would be the bookstores, especially when Bookstore Row was a huge, thriving concern. It's not really anymore. It would be the Strand. It would be great food. And the key, for me, the linchstone of it all, the real anchor of it all, was having a welcoming place to stay. So you're not at the mercy of the city when night falls. So you have a place to stay where you are welcome. And for me, that place ranged the gamut. From little rat trap walk-up apartments, 2 rooms, where the welcome was so warm, so glowing, that it didn't matter. You could have been in the palace of a king. It was still great. All the way up to renovated loft apartments with full views of the Empire State Building from up close with 100-foot ceilings in the meatpacking district that are just these renovated glories that don't look like anything from the street. You have no idea what's there until you go up into them. I have been up into those. I've been up into all of those, all kinds of apartments like that, and everything in between. And for me, that always did it. Those were the anchors of my New York, was first to start at the library. Right here, no branch library, just the Fifth Avenue Library. Start there and work. And then let yourself loose on the city, the Natural History Museum, the Central Park in all of its weathers and moods, the Strand, the art museums, the Met, Broadway, all of it, and all of it with the other cynosure. One was the library, and the other was that you had a warm welcome for the night, that you had a place to be, that a tiny little part of the city welcomed you. So that is great. I'm going to look through here. I wonder if there'll be anybody that I know that's doing little squibs in here, any writers that I know. But that'll be great. That was your Penguin for today. The recommend is totally off the rails. I can't recommend the book because I don't know if you'll ever find it. And I don't know if the contents are any good. Probably they're not. I'd recommend other books about the glories of libraries. But I recommend the library itself if you can ever get a chance to experience it. Who knows if our world will ever revert back to that. But if it does, and you get a chance to go to the New York Public Library and just wander around, or maybe even, best of all, sit and work for a bit, do so. Do so. You'll be glad you did. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.